Welcome in everyone to the live reaction show. You with myself, Steve Wyss, and RJ and his magnificent clock behind him in the background there. RJ, how you doing this Sunday lunchtime over there in the States?
Yeah, Steve, I'm doing great. Good to be here with you. It's midday in the East Coast. About an hour away from the American football kickoff, right? So that's big. But there's a lot of action thus far this morning and over the weekend in European leagues and even in MLS. But yeah, nice to be here with you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I've been following the Swedish title race today over in Malmö. Have just won the title in Sweden. IFK Gothenburg. Remember that I had them as an outright in the relegation in one of the shows we did in July. They survived by scoring in the 95th minute. So,
Of course I did.
although that was to just avoid the playoffs. So, yeah. On to there's a really big game going on right now in the Premier League, Chelsea against Man City, and there's been goals. Surprisingly, there's been goals. I think quite a few. I was seeing we're liking the under here before the kickoff, and but 1-1 after 31 minutes. Haaland from the penalty spot. I didn't think it was a penalty. I thought VAR should have overruled it, but Haaland scored, and then Thiago Silva, I do believe, has been credited with the equaliser for Chelsea from a corner. So the goal line now in running, actually, for those who do like in running betting, is 3.75, which is interesting. So you need at least 2 more goals if you're going on the over there. Chelsea in running, if you like them on the money line, as big as plus 350. The draw or tie is plus 210. And Man City minus 110. Now that's going to attract some interest. Man City to win a game in the Premier League at minus 110. What you thought? Would you back Man City just blind on that price or not?
I think I typically would, but Chelsea is just I very, very rarely wager in a match that Chelsea plays in, just because I find it difficult to predict what kind of performance we'll get from Chelsea. Like you said, Steve, pre-game, I pegged this as an under, right, based on Manchester City's form on the road, Chelsea's form at home, and just the overall impact of the match. I figured it'd be a tight contest. But now with that controversial penalty call, which I think we most agree was a bit of a, as Billy says in the chat, a gift.
It
right?
does seem like a gift in a way, doesn't it? But is it a trap? In the words of Admiral Akbar, is it a trap or not?
Yeah, Akbar. Yeah, it's a trap. Yeah, I think it could be, but I think Manchester City's just they have too much for this Chelsea side. I don't expect them to hang on. I would say at that price, it is a bit of a gift. I think it's worth a stab, right?
I have to agree. Man City away against Chelsea at the moment. Yeah, minus 110, 1-1 after 33 minutes. Yeah, I would probably lean towards the visitors, to be fair. Some other matches that are going on. The French game, there was a very early red card for Rennes against Lyon. Saw quite a few liking Rennes here, and why wouldn't you? Lyon haven't won a game of football yet in Ligue 1 this year, but Lyon are minus 120 at the interval to win. I couldn't trust them because they haven't won a match yet, but this is a very favourable situation for Lyon. Rennes also played in midweek with 10 men, by the way, in the Europa League. They actually managed to beat Panathinaikos with 10. What is going to be left in their tank in the second half? I don't know. So I don't like betting on games in running when there's been a red card at all. So I can't suggest anything here. But I couldn't trust Lyon with monopoly money at minus 120. Other matches that are just going on. Bundesliga, Werder Bremen 0, Frankfurt 0. We're going to talk about Bundesliga unders actually in this a bit later, RJ. There's been a regression definitely with goals in that league. Not many chances, not even a shot on target in the Werder Bremen fixture at this point in time. We've just had a big match kick off in Italy, the Rome derby, Lazio against Roma. Result of that's going to determine the winner of the challenge in the European preview show. It's been a shocking show for Europe this week. I completely fired blanks. James Eastham did have a hot dog winner yesterday at least, but it's not been a great show this week, RJ. It's the way it goes sometimes. It can be tricky just before an international break. But that Rome derby, it could be spicy. So there was a suggestion there might be a lot of cards in that fixture. And I think also there's a derby in Spain going on. Sevilla against Betis, I think, kicks off in half an hour. There is. Card line was 6.5. 6.5 for that game. So
I think I like both teams to
thoughts
score.
on there?
I was hesitant. I was gonna play that. I think it was, what was it, minus 135 last evening, and I think it's around the same price now. I could be wrong, but last I checked, it was. I like both teams to score there, and I would imagine it'd be, because it's a derby. It's going to be some feistiness as well. But yeah, there's a few matches kicking off. Lazio Roma. That's 0-0 right now in the 6 minute. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think just the city. Back to your original point, Steve, is you know it's only a matter of time. I think before they open it up and take control of this.
they are starting to dominate the game after conceding that surprising equaliser. Manchester City, there's 10 minutes to go until half time. We're going to talk about, because we've got RJ on the show, we are going to talk about the MLS playoffs soon. But we've got to start with the Premier League, as always, the big league, the league everyone bets in.
Hmm.
And I think probably the big topics from yesterday were Spurs' late collapse at Wolves and probably Newcastle's injury problems as well. Spurs, it's about timing with them because a few weeks ago they looked value to finish in the top four. Now they've lost 2 consecutive games. The top 4 odds, this changes week in, week out. But Spurs are back into minus 139 now for top 4. Newcastle plus 125. Aston Villa plus 600 with Bet Rivers. Villa won today against Fulham. And there's been a goal for Chelsea. Chelsea have scored against the run of play. I think it's Sterling he's got on the score sheet here. This is a real turn up for the Bucks. No one saw this one coming.
I think you're slightly ahead of me, but hang on. Here we go. Looks like,
I
yep.
think it's Raheem Sterling. We'll see what the goal lines do. We'll see what VAR says about it.
I
You can't
think he's
celebrate a
on
goal.
sides, but questionable maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
you
can
can't
never
celebrate
celebrate a goal
until,
now until the sprint kickoff, can you?
which
They
is
might
brutal
find,
too.
yeah, they might find a toenail offside or a ridiculous infringement, but it looks a good goal to me from where they did it. But this is really put the cat amongst the pigeons. I'll update the lines
Wow.
when the goal is confirmed. But top 4 race Chelsea actually for the top 4. You can get plus 550. If they won this game,
Okay.
that would interest some backers, wouldn't they? But Tottenham now minus 139 RJ, Newcastle plus 125, Villa plus 600. I mean, of those 3 teams now, is the value with Villa, or are Spurs minus 139 still a good thing? Do you think for top 4?
I I think Spurs is still a good play there. I think they just got caught off guard, right? It was a weak moment for them. Right, gave up 2 goals and added time to lose yesterday. That was a rare moment, and I think a moment that would wake a side up like that, right? It really bring them back to reality. They'll make the necessary adjustments. They'll make sure they uh, avoid those late collapses in the future. And I still like Spurs top 4 there. I wouldn't really drift from that too much.
Yeah, a bit of Ange
Personally,
ball. It
I
has
mean.
been. They've had injuries as well. It must be said, Spurs, and the squad maybe can't cope long term. Newcastle, I think, have had like 10 players out yesterday against Bournemouth. How do you?
Yeah.
This is just a sort of a general question. How do you approach teams with big injury news? Do you factor that into your betting? I know some bettors who don't actually, unless it's like a huge player like an Mbappe or Mo Salah of this world, maybe a Haaland, they don't actually change their betting strategy too much. I mean, Newcastle, for example, there's not really one main man that you wouldn't think. That's Bruno. But what's your betting strategy when teams do have injuries? Is injury news overrated or is it absolutely crucial?
I think most of the time it's overrated. I typically do not change my stance or sway my bets based on injuries. I think there is very few times or selective times that I would factor that in. And Mbappe, for example, right? We all know about him. He he's the main man at PSG. He's got 13 goals, leads League One. He's their guy, right? Outside of Hakimi, it's pretty arguable to say that they've scored 3 goals in I think their last 5 domestic matches, and without him, I would reconsider if I'm on a wager, say, team total over 2.5 or even the total, I would can reconsider that. But, Erling Haaland, you look at some of these teams that have multiple goal scorers, right? Multiple players that can contribute, even coming off the bench. I'm kind of like a next man up guy. I think there's talent to be found amongst all teams, and you give somebody an opportunity, especially teams like in the Premier League or even in some of the top five leagues. You'll find goal scorers off the bench. Um, so very really will I sway Steve, and like I said, it has to be like a guy like Mbappe with a different PSG team than they've had in the last couple of years. So I wouldn't normally sway, but there are select few times I would. And Newcastle, for example, not to just to finish my thought, you look at their long list of injuries. They've had long slate of injuries for the last few matches. They battled a couple draws, a couple losses now, but it wouldn't sway
It
me.
could have been more the schedule that got to Newcastle
Yeah,
playing so many games. You're right; they managed to get some results with their injuries, and in the end, it's actually the schedule you've got to look at more. Teams playing a certain number of games in a week or whatever, that is perhaps more an important factor. I do kind of agree with you about injuries being a bit overrated. I've been sucked into that trap so many times there down the years. I'll tell you now. And the biggest one, my biggest gripe, is when a backup goalkeeper comes in and you bet on the overs or you bet on the team that's against them, and he comes up with like a random worldy performance,
right.
and that really really annoys me, especially if it's a keeper like no one's ever really heard of, and the amount of times that happens, and it's often because they're just so motivated to come in
Right.
and
Prove a
perform.
point. Make it
Yeah.
make a statement, right? And I think that's the driving factor. That's why I think injuries are slightly overrated because you got somebody coming up that obviously is worthy of being there. Maybe not a first teamer, obviously, but has a point to prove and obviously has the talent to back it up. Oh wow, what a
This
save!
is a really, really open game now
Yep,
to Stamford Bridge. I must say, I
Haaland was
would be.
just about to
Haaland should
equalize.
have scored. Great
Yeah,
save from Sanchez. I tell you what, it's not a good time to bet 3 minutes before half time. But if this was like in the start of the second half, now I'd be looking at over 4.75. But a lot can change at the interval. Managers change their tactics, everything. So
yeah,
it's not a great time to bet. But if anyone who really does love a big bit of value, you could actually bet over 3.5 first half goals because there've probably been +5 added here. Could you get a goal in 7 minutes? Maybe you could. But that wouldn't shock me if there was another goal right before half time. But that is just for those who like a big play. Where were we? Yes, on to outrights in Premier League. And this is a bit of the negative side, really, RJ.
mm,
I hate to beat up on poor teams, but the three promoted outfits now, they're starting to get cast adrift at the bottom of the Premier League table. To be fair, Sheffield United have picked up a draw today against Brighton, but the
yeah,
lack of
late,
wins
right?
for the lack of victories for Sheffield United, Luton Town, and Burnley. And now we've got Sheffield United -715 to go down, Luton Town -500, Burnley -125. I don't know why they're so short compared to those other. I think Burnley are playing worse football myself. Bournemouth +150, Everton +330, and Fulham +800. Do you see any team that can sort of be dragged back in to trouble? Perhaps a Fulham, Bournemouth. Do you think, RJ, or not? Or are those three now for you just they're going to go straight down?
Ah, tough to say, Steve. One second. Yeah, so I would say Burnley's a side that's interesting to me, right? Any side who allows 30 plus goals through 11, 12 matches is going to have a hard time staying up in this league. Minus 21 goal differential. You know, I I I think Luton, has a shot to turn things around. Burnley, I think also I think Sheffield. I think most would agree they're down in the basement, and I don't see them coming out. Um, they're going to have a hard time. But your question was, Steve, Bournemouth. You think if any side would slip, it'd be them
Yeah,
down into
yeah.
that relegation zone. I'm not sold on Fulham either. I think they have enough. Losing Mitrovic to Saudi Arabia was certainly a blow for them preseason. Um, they're pretty decent defensively. They're not terrible, but you look at some of these sides. Bournemouth clearly right. 27 goals allowed through through 12 matches, just 3 points out of the relegation zone. Everton's a side that you could see a drift. I think, in my opinion, they don't really show much, although they've won. They've won 2 out of their last 3 matches and have actually kind of turned it
I
around.
think
But
Fulham are awful myself. Every
yeah,
time I see them play, they are bad. They've got a little bit about them defensively, but they can't. They really struggle to score goals. And
they
actually,
just
Mitrovic's loss is obviously huge. So
right.
if they're
They
not
just don't
careful,
show enough week
they
in and
don't,
week out. And
RJ.
then to your point, like, all right, so
And there has been a goal again. Sorry, I'm probably spoiling it for you here, RJ. But there has been another goal. It is Manchester City. It is a header from a Kanji. This is crazy, actually, this first. 2-2.
yeah, I see the
I did
corner
say,
about
didn't I? Did anyone take that? Did anyone have a nibble of the over 3.5 before half time?
be
Because
curious.
it did look, it was coming. It's a header. I think this should be fine. This goal, really, really poor defending from Chelsea. Apologies. This game is just, I'm not used to. Usually the games that we do live are boring. There's not much going on, but
This is
this is a
good. This is
crazy
good
game.
stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want the halftime whistle for this game, but
No, I'm gonna switch over to Premier League. I'm gonna triple quad. You know what? The red zone. I'm gonna quad box it here.
Red Sun. Laid Back has just asked, will we be doing videos on Nations League? Yes, there's going to be 2 videos. Laid Back, we're going to have Rory Barlow on, and we're going to have Daniele Fisichella on. There's going to be a show recorded tomorrow. Hopefully, it'll be out live on YouTube. We'll be covering the European internationals, qualifying, and World Cup qualifying, of course, going across the world now as well. So don't worry, fear not, because we win team, as you covered there.
I appreciate the
gosh,
questions.
I'm losing focus of where we were, but yeah, down into the the bottom of the table. Well, it leads me to the sack race. It leads me to the sack race. I love the sack race. There still hasn't been a manager sacked since the first match of the season kicked off in the Premier League. We know Wolves did lose their manager 3 days before the start of the season. Erik ten Hag is the favourite to be next out, plus 175. Paul Heckingbottom, plus 250, although today's result's not going to do him any harm. Andoni Iraola now is back out to plus 500. That was a great win for them yesterday against Newcastle. So Vincent Kompany, he's the man I want to talk about on today with you, RJ. Plus 600, next manager out. Burnley, you don't know where the next point's coming from. The way that he refuses to change his style. Now, there's a suggestion that he might even walk before he's pushed because he's, to protect his reputation. Burnley vastly overrated by the books just based on last season, and is Kompany actually under threat, do you think?
So, first off, Werder Bremen just scored on a PK right before half, up 1-0 against Eintracht Frankfurt, as a side note. Steve, to answer your question, I think I'd see him walking before he'd be let go because of his reputation. I will say, they are minus 121 from a goal differential, but I like how he's handled the situation, right? I know specifically in England, right? Critics, everyone's very harsh on the coaches, and he sort of just gives credit where credit's due, right? He, after the loss yesterday, he's like, we played a very strong side who, it's difficult to sustain in this league, getting promoted, and you play these teams and kind of get yourself in check, right? You get a reality check. You kind of understand how good you need to be on a day-to-day basis to stay up in this league and to compete with some of the top teams. And I think he understands that coming from when he played in the league, right? For Manchester City and the likes. But I just think he's right. The best will test you in every way to stay sharp. We know we haven't been that sharp, so we just have to do better, right? Kind of calls a spade, and I like the way he handles the situation. Doesn't throw his hands up. He doesn't complain about refs or situational type stuff. He just
But does
realizes
he
that.
need to? I agree with you. I've noticed Kompany just sort of his interviews. He just gets on with it and he doesn't blame ref. But maybe in the Premier League, it's such a, excuse the language a little bit. It's such a shithousery league, isn't it? That you've got to be, it's dog eat dog. And that Kompany, I think, is a little bit passive, to be honest.
You think
Steve,
to your point though, do you think like for him to get a little bit more passionate to sort of maybe potentially influence some games, like
Mm.
referees not being surprised when he gets passionate about some tricky calls or dodgy calls, and maybe they think twice about it. I don't know. I think there is some trickiness going on, if you will, amongst these leagues, and if you can influence in any way, do so. But I just, how's he
Definitely.
going to do that with Burnley with the side, which is 4 points after 12 matches? I don't know.
I think I actually said on these shows in the last 3 or 4 that someone will get sacked during this international break. Now, I'm not actually 100% sure that happens now because of Sheffield United and Bournemouth, especially picking up some surprising results of late. There's a massive game on the 2nd of December, and that is Sheffield United against Burnley. Now, I think that could be a case of loser gets fired. Certainly in the case of Burnley, they can't be affording to lose that sort of fixture. So I would look at a company plus 600. I really would, as the next man out in the Premier League. So we'll move on. We're going to move on to MLS. We don't often talk about MLS on this show, but because you're here, RJ, I think it's a good time. We're in the playoffs. First of all, how big is MLS out there in the States? I feel like it's gaining traction more in Europe, but can it compete with other sports out there in the States? And we're going to talk about the new playoff system in a minute, but just MLS overall. Has it got bigger, do you think, or is it messy, or now he's not involved, is it sort of quietening down?
Yeah, I'd say it's quieting down. I think depending on your region, it's pretty bigger. So, Billy, I see Billy here in the chat. I believe he's from actually my state, Rhode Island. So, quick shout out to Rhode Island. I was at Gillette on a Wednesday night when they had their playoff match, and typically when I go to a Gillette for a Patriots game, right, you get there 3-4 hours early. There's so much traffic. It's kind of in shambles. It's tough to move around. There's 70,000 people. I was there for a Wednesday night for dinner, and there was very little traffic, very little cars. There's a couple attendants kind of moving people around. Now, putting in perspective, obviously the NFL is a lot less than buzz than the NFL, right? But it was remarkably quiet, and I couldn't believe it. It was easy to get in, easy to get out. I thought
That's
I
a
would be.
worry, isn't it? That's a
It is
worry.
a worry, and the Revs have been a pretty good team. They have a pretty solid fan base. I think like you look at LAFC, massive fan base. Um, you know, you look at Seattle, they got a pretty good fan base. I mean, you got to pick and choose your spots in the MLS, Steve. But obviously, having Messi come, I think Inter Miami signed Luis Suarez, right, as well. So they're building a powerhouse down there. Miami's going to have, you know, all the fan flair, right? All the celebrities, all the people are going to go and show up. But again, it's regional, right? Depends
I
on.
think I think the best atmospheres in MLS are generally the stadiums that have their own soccer stadium.
Yes,
And the only team I think that's ever really pulled it off is the Sounders.
right.
That they seem to make that field really strong. But like for example, I think the Revs would be better off with their own Pacific Stadium. They've got a loyal fan base, like you say. It's just you can't. It's 80,000, isn't it? Gillette.
It's
They're
close
not.
to 70. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
the
usually just
Revs
fill the
haven't got
lower
that many
tier.
fans. Andrew Potter does make a good point. I think it is really big out in the northwest of Cascadia Cup, the Timbers and the Whitecaps, and obviously Seattle. That's a big rivalry out there. The new playoff system, then RJ, is I mean, this is different, completely different to anywhere in the world that I know of. I don't know, maybe they do something similar in Thailand or Hong Kong. I don't know. I don't follow those leagues, but we're in a situation now, and it suits American sports where it's a best of 3 basically. You've got to win 2 out of the 3 ties.
Mm-hmm.
There's no draws. If a match ends level, you get a penalty shootout, and it's been interesting, hasn't it? So I mean, you could get battered in the first match 5-0, but it doesn't really matter. Aggregate score is not a thing now, and everything. So I mean, how do you? I mean, as an American, do you find that easier to sort of compute? Do you think does the general public compute it easier because it compares to the other sports so well?
I like it. I also like that the goal aggregate doesn't come into play here, right? So you could have an off night, but guess what? It doesn't matter. We're going to the big thing here, Steve, is it allows for each side to have home field advantage. Number one, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have your home field, and then the third match. Obviously, we'll go back to where the higher seed was, but it, it's good because it helps sets up. I think it actually kind of helps set up rivalries too, in a way, right, in the MLS, right? Because typically, you got LAFC, LA Galaxy, right? El Trafico, as they call it, right? That's the biggest rivalry in MLS, arguably. And that match always gets the spectacles, it always gets attention. And now having teams, specifically this year, starting with the best of three, you look at what was it, Nashville and Orlando. I think they could be setting up a little bit of a rivalry, right? I thought that was a bit of a entertaining couple of matches, and it's like to bet on this, Steve. Right? It's kind of situational based, right? I
Well,
still
I was
look at.
going to ask you about how do we adapt as bettors, because I had some people come to me and say you've got to get on the overs because away goals don't count. Teams don't want penalties, but I'm looking at the stats, and it's been a really even split of overs and unders. If we use like the 2.5 line, there have been matches go to penalties. So maybe you're right. Situational. You just maybe don't overthink things. Teams that normally have unders maybe stay unders, and teams that go wild maybe stay wild.
Yeah, I sometimes avoid playoff matches just because of what's at stake. But if I were to be wagering on it, and I have a play that kind of shows up in my mirror, and I'm like, all right, the metrics line up, the situation lines up, especially in the first match, or even the second match. So I think the first two matches you have a little bit more flexibility, like you normally would. A team, say, going down into the second match, game two, well, they need to win, right? So they'll potentially open things up a little more. They'll be potentially more aggressive. Their season's on the line, right? You can look at metrics, and that helps. But you start getting to like the third match where it's all knotted up. I would expect a tighter, conservative type match. Like I'd probably consider passing, to be fair, on that match because of what's at stake. I see Billy mention here that the goal line is comparable to Germany. I think to an extent it is. I just MLS is tough. I wager on it somewhat frequently, but I feel as though the overs aren't as prevalent as you see in other countries, for sure.
There's been a goal in Rennes. Lyon have scored. This is a massive goal in the context of their season. They could be heading to their first victory of the campaign. I think it was a header. I'm not actually sure exactly who's netted it. They have deserved it on the metrics, certainly, in this game. I did say Rennes might struggle in the second half. The referee, Stephanie Frappard, they're surrounding her right now. The Rennes players, they're not happy about this one at all. I don't know what they're moaning about, just probably conceding a goddamn goal, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it looks like, I'll update you if it's going to count or not, but I don't see anything wrong with it. Myself, actually, I think they're moaning about a potential push on a defender, but it looks legit to me. Far worse in that game last week in the Newcastle Arsenal. But yeah, it could be a big goal for Lyon. Olympic Lyon.
Yeah, it looks good to me. Steve, I lost you here.
Yeah, everyone's been telling me, RJ, to get involved in this MLS match tonight. Columbus Crew against Atlanta. And get on the overs, apparently, because these teams are wild. I actually backed Columbus Crew mid-season to win MLS Cup just because I watched them play and it looked so brilliant. The soccer, the teams that are left in it then, I don't know if I've not got any outright odds anywhere. I can't find anywhere, unfortunately, RJ, but the teams left in it are Cincinnati against Philadelphia Union. Seattle Sounders against LAFC. That's a spicy one, isn't it? And then Sporting Kansas City against Houston Dynamo. The winner of Crew Atlanta, I think, plays Houston. No, I don't actually know who they play. But anyway, I don't know if you've got a favourite of any of the teams left in it that you might consider to go the distance.
Well, so I was looking at this. prior to the show. I also want to give a shout out to somebody I talked to a bit on Twitter. His name's Just Some Footy, or J Some Footy. He does an MLS podcast with another buddy of mine, Cooper, Sports Profit, and they always talk MLS, and I always chop it up with those two, or at least Just Some Footy in some fashion. And I'll give you my take, and then I'll say why I mentioned him, because I think prior to even the playoffs, I would say Orlando looks like the team, in my opinion. If I was going to bet on someone to raise a trophy, it'd probably be Orlando right now. Um, they've been consistent over the last couple of years. They've gotten better and better. I think they're probably one of the most physical teams in the playoffs. And I think Seattle's pretty decent. I think LAFC is a good spot, but I don't think there's much value there for what the odds are showing. And I was talking to Garrett, just some footy, and he also agreed that if money's on the line, he's back in Orlando. So that made my thoughts more. I felt better about that as well.
Orlando City FC
Orlando
could
City,
be the team. Don't mix them up with
yeah,
the Orlando Pirates in South Africa, but
right,
yeah,
yes.
Orlando could be one to watch there. Of course, you've got Western Conference against Eastern Conference, and then you've got the final, which I don't know if the final is just one leg or back to. It's going to be best of three now. I've not actually checked
Mm,
those rules. That's my bad, but yeah, that
yeah.
could be one to look out for. Then Orlando City. Just to update on the goal line here, Rennes against Lyon is now over 1.5 goals, minus 138. I'd be looking to nibble that soon. I think Lyon are
Yeah,
actually looking to score a second goal, and not just sitting back here, which is a good sign, I think, for those who want to get involved. And that Rennes have obviously got to go
I
for it.
agree.
They've got 10 men. They're going to be tired after 2 matches playing with 10 men. So I'd be looking at the overs there. The goal line is Chelsea Man City at halftime is 5.5. I wouldn't get involved in that right now because you want to see how the first 10 minutes go in the second half, in
Agreed.
my personal opinion. City, even money, plus 100 to win on the nose. They did. Then it was been a really topsy-turvy game. They finished strongly, though, Man City, in that half. I would probably lean towards them. You're right, Werder Bremen are beating Frankfurt 1-0 half-time.
Hmm.
And we're going to lead us to the Bundesliga now, RJ, because I had a really poor round in Bundesliga. It's a league that's treated me really, really well this season. But yesterday, no, it didn't work out for me. And the unders are starting to come back now in Germany. Some have been deserved. Some have had crazy metrics.
Hmm.
But I mean, as Nigel Seeley said on the EPL show, remember the goals go down in November.
How could I forget?
Same thing, mate. And a lot of his reasoning has been, weather related over here in the UK. The same applies in Germany, really. How does weather affecting games this time of year? Is that a factor you look at? Because it has been colder, there has been rain around, the temps have been, dropping. I do wonder if that is a factor, RJ. Are you now on under alert in the parts of Europe that could be a lot colder this time of year?
Yeah, I suppose I'm on alert, but I'm never sort of shying or stepping away from cold weather. I actually did a little bit of research on this last winter. I did some research, just browsing the web, looking at some analytics, and looking at science. Believe it or not, right? Cold weather. One could predict or assume that it would reduce goals, but it's not necessarily the case. The reality is, when the weather gets cold, it can affect focus, right? Human body actually alters its focus sometimes to different
This is
parts
very
of.
technical. I'm loving this, RJ.
No, but it's like your body when it gets cool, especially below freezing, right? Your focus becomes elsewhere at times, right? It's just the nature of your how your brain operates. Stamina is affected because your body actually burns glucose 5 times faster than usual, right? So glucose is sugar, right? Which is why important. People think just when it's hot out you need those electrolytes. You actually need same amount or even more electrolytes when it gets cooler out to keep your body fueled. Reaction time drops by about 45%, according to science. from what I've researched. So, I'm like, me, I don't really do XG and all some of these unique metrics, but the reality is when I'm talking science here, reaction time drops a bit. And the biggest one is muscle rigidity. So cold temperatures actually decrease blood flow, which can lead to muscle rigidity, which, I'm trying to give you the best term here, but it's like you have sometimes the inability. It's difficult to flex or shape or have quick movements at times.
So we're not going
So
to
I mean,
be athletes are not naturally going to be at their best, and this is
essentially
kind
it.
of what leads me to the
Yeah.
betting angle in terms of obviously that can lead to decreased goal production, but also mistakes and
Yes.
things like that, which might lead to more random goals being scored. And this is why it can be quite tricky, can't it? You've also got to look at the actual style of managers, the ones that like to pass the ball on the ground. Pitches are a lot better nowadays, of course they are, but bad weather can still impact it, especially if it's a little bit on the frozen side. It's intriguing. I have to say, I am now, because the Bundesliga has been so high with goals, there just has to be a natural regression. And there have
Yeah.
still been some high scoring games this weekend, but I've noticed both teams scoring no's hit a bit more. There's been some more random unders, and sometimes the party has to end, doesn't
I
it?
agree.
And
Sometimes you gotta ring
I'm
the bell.
starting to get a little bit worried about
Yeah.
the German Bundesliga, because we might get artificially inflated high goal lines. You see, but they shouldn't be maybe as high as they deserve.
And you're
So
like me. We don't target unders, so it's like, this
I
over
know we don't. Yeah.
3.25 line should probably be over 2.75. So
Mm,
you'd think twice. And back one quick. Well, I'll give you my thoughts too on the Bundesliga, Steve, because I had a tougher day there as well. But Deflategate, right, with the Patriots, right?
yes.
The cold weather actually can make for the underinflation of the balls on the pitch. So I mean, you couple that with some high winds. The Patriots, I don't really want to talk about because they're a
I was
disaster,
going to
and we
mention
all
them
know
later
that.
but seeing as you
Yeah,
brought them up now,
yeah. I'm on to the next games here, but yeah, the Bundesliga. I took Stuttgart match right over 3.25. Missed penalty obviously affected that. Darmstadt, I figured both sides will show up. They need to. Nope, that was a dud. And I
well,
was
Mainz have got a
on.
new manager, and I've got to be. I mentioned this on the previous show that they got a clean sheet against Leipzig, and the new manager's ultra defensive. You will not get me
Yeah,
near a Mainz
yeah,
over now
yeah.
he's in charge. It's a real shame. I hate defensive managers as an overbettor, but
Right.
as you got a hot dog in the background there, RJ, but
Speaking, I do actually have a hot dog. He's a dachshund, so he is a hot dog too. So funny enough. Sorry
yeah,
about that.
so it's that time of year where we've got to look out for it. France as well can be. France is a weird country. In the north, it can get really cold, but in the south, it can still be really tropical, of course. So
Hmm.
we just get a brief talk about Liga. Unfortunately, PSG are back to the top of the table. I say that unfortunately just because it's so boring every year. They win it, don't they? And they're not even that great. I mean, yesterday I thought they were outplayed, but just Mbappe and Donnarumma were really, really good for them. And I get people ask me, can anyone stop PSG? And Nice, the side, they're still unbeaten. The simple answer is no. The other teams just don't have the consistency that PSG have. PSG will probably only get 80 to 85 points this season.
Right.
That's enough. That's enough to win Liga for them, because the rest of the field are just not there. I mean, Nice are an interesting side because of the defense, but
Yeah. They don't score enough
they
though.
yeah, they don't score enough. And I always say long term. I know in like NFL and things like that, they always say defense wins championships.
Right.
Well, in soccer, I just don't think defensive teams can do it for the whole season. Especially it just grinds you down playing that sort of football. Eventually, come March time, April time, it's really awkward, and inevitably teams that have unders for a lot of the season then revert to overs. That's how I personally see
Yeah.
it. So I don't personally see it. City has scored again. It's Haaland with the goal 1 minute after half time. Wow, this is a crazy game. 3-2 at the bridge. I never saw this coming. Anyone on the unders have been well and truly squashed, haven't they, in this game?
Yeah,
But
you
Erling
forget about
Haaland
it.
has. Anyone who does fantasy Premier League, I'm Haaland-less personally, and every time he scores a goal, I don't like it anymore. But obviously for his backers, then it's a big goal for them there. But it's Man City back ahead. So those who did back them -120 plus even money at half time, it's looking good at the moment.
Feeling
3-2
all right. Yeah,
feeling very much all right.
I don't even know what to expect of this match. I was expecting a more quiet second half, but here we are, right off the gate. 3-2.
Yeah, certainly.
But to your point, Steve, PSG, I don't think anybody's going to overthrow them. I think all dependent on the health of Kylian Mbappe, to be fair, right? If he can stay healthy, yes. If he does not stay healthy, well, could be interesting. So it'd be something to monitor for sure.
Well, when he's in the mood, and he was yesterday. He's unplayable. He's probably the best player in the world when he is in the mood, to be honest with you. Jude Bellingham going very well, of course, as well. A quick word on La Liga. I don't know if you don't follow. Do you follow this league as much? But Girona, we had Rory Barlow talk about them on the show a few weeks ago. I can't believe this. They just continue. I was actually on. That was one of the rare winners I had yesterday. I was on there over, but they every time I watch them, they look great. Are we at the stage where we're starting to think, title shock? Leicester City talk often comes around when there's still a massive price to win the league. I think they're like 50-1 last time I saw them. I mean, what do you make of Girona? Their metrics are actually pretty pure, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they're a good side. I think they're definitely overachieving, but they continue to overachieve, right? They're pretty consistent thus far. I think it's only a matter of time, though, before Real Madrid, just take them. Take over that top spot. I don't know. I think, outside of our team, Dovbyk, which I could be mispronouncing his name, on Girona, the striker, who's been phenomenal for them, the top scorer is from Ukraine, played for Dynapro the last few years, and then prior to that played for Midtjylland. I know I'm mispronouncing that from Denmark, right? The Superliga.
Midtjylland, I think. I'm not sure.
Sorry, Midtjylland. So, it's a good story, right? I hope to see them continue to excel and stay in that spot. To be honest, I'm rooting for them because it's nice to see some new teams win the leagues and just get different.
It'd be nice to see them certainly get in the top four, wouldn't it? Someone different again to get in the top four, and we're certainly keeping an eye on them. Girona, for sure. That is definitely the way. Obviously, they're actually 20-1 now. They have been halved in price since I last saw.
Oh wow!
Although that does look really short now, I must say, to be honest with you. But just before we finish the show, I want to give a shout out to the Because We Win cricket show. The cricket boys have been doing the World Cup at the moment. Ed Hawkins, John Wright, and they've been having several winners, actually. It's the ICC Cricket World Cup. It's been a long tournament. It's been ongoing for at least a month, if not more. But we are now at the semi-final stage. There's only a couple of games left. We've got India against New Zealand and Australia against South Africa. India are the -110 favourites with Bet Rivers to lift the Cricket World Cup. What I can tell you is that the boys will be coming out with a big show to look at that semi-finals and, of course, the eventual final. India, I'm sure you probably don't know an awful lot about cricket. I actually play a bit of cricket in the summer, RJ.
I know that. That's your thing, right? I don't know much about it, but I've learned a bit from the shows, to be fair.
Yeah, they've been good, haven't they? The boys have been really hitting some good winners, and it won't be a surprise to anyone that India are the favourites to win that competition, but I'll be interested to see what they say. So best way you can stay up to date with those shows is subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already. Hit that bell icon as well, and then you're notified when it comes out. Do follow Because We Win on Twitter and Instagram as well, because there's often some exclusive content on those platforms. But it's international break coming up soon. There will be no reaction show next week. But there's 2 preview shows, like I said before, coming up, and then following the international break, there'll be more regular content in Premier League and obviously from the European Church Champions League as well. RJ will be back to batter that one. But it's been a pleasure as always, my man.
Yeah, it sure is, Steve. Always good to catch up with you. Even in this, I like doing these shows. It's just ad hoc type fashion. We kind of just cover the matches as they are, talk a little bit about the weekend and kind of the state of the state, right, amongst the top leagues. Obviously, we had some future plays prior to the season in all the top 5 leagues, and some of those are looking pretty good. I know we keep talking about FC Köln, but they're looking decent to be relegated. RB Leipzig's looking good. You had some good calls that
Leverkusen, Salernitana have done well for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then we'll see what happens. But shout out to Billy and laid back Ahmed and Andrew for interacting during the chat here.
Yeah, thanks, boys. And I tell you what, I think there is a bit of interest on MLS. I'm going to probably bring it onto the reaction show each week now until the playoff, the grand final is done. So it's a crunch stage, isn't it? And there's obviously some plenty of betting interest in that. Like I said, but yeah, that's all I can wish everyone is the very best of Sunday. Good luck in the NFL, whatever you might be taking. Good luck to your teams out there. And there's always plenty of sport on the horizon. But because we win team, myself and RJ, remember to gamble responsibly and take care. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Take care, everyone.